this looks perfect. So I'm going to put my parts in this section here and let them seal in the sealant over here, and I can pull them right out. 1946. Wow, it's been a while. It's good to be back on YouTube. Thanks everyone for watching my channel. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do so. All my contact information, by the way, is in the description of the video, in the beginning of the video, and at the end of the video. So there is no need to try and contact me through just, comments. All that information is there. Please take the time to read some of the comments. Some other information in regards to the video, like how to contact maybe manufacturers or whatever, is in the description of the video below. So today's video, I'm going to do a video on black oxide coating. A lot of times you might see hardware that has a black finish to it, or some other part, or even guns that have kind of a bluing finish to them, or what they call a black oxide coating. It's a coating that prevents rust and gives you a nice black finish. Now, there are several types of coating processes, and this is not what you would call a plating process, like a nickel plating or a zinc plating or a chrome plating. This is simply what they call a conversion coating, meaning there's some sort of solution that we're going to dip this into that is going to basically have maybe some salt in it, some sort of catalyst. It's going to take the ferrous metals and put a black oxide, like convert it to a black oxide, or what they call magnetite, and that's going to leave this nice black coating on it and prevent rust. Oxidization is basically a rusting process. So think of it as that we're kind of turning the metal to kind of a rust, but it's going to be a black rust, and then it's not going to be able to rust any further. The second part of the process is to put a sealant on it, that the sealant is going to get into the pores of the metal. So we were going to use like either an oil-based or maybe like a wet-based, water-based sealant. From what it is the water-based sealants will give it a more drier look. The oil-based will give it more shiny, wet look. So the process I'm using is sold by a company called Caswell Plating. I looked it up online. They're not paying me to do this video, and I figured let me give it a shot. One of the problems I have with making parts like this is simply that you have to get a batch of them together usually to send out to somebody to get done. And most of the time I don't have a volume of parts to shoot out unless I'm doing thousands of an item. And I also don't have the time to wait around for it to come back. So I figured on these shifted jobs that I'm doing, it'd be a great idea to just try this out and see if it works. So what they do is they give you a black concentrate like this, and I got a quart container here, and you're going to mix this 9 parts of distilled water, which you can get at your local supermarket or a pharmacy, and 9 parts of distilled water to 1 part of this black oxide concentrate. And so that means you can do 9 cups of water to 1 cup of black oxide concentrate, or 1 pint to 9 pints, and so forth. 9 gallons to 1 gallon, and so forth. So what I also did was I tried to find containers that I looked around for that basically have the volumes and the size of the parts that I want. So once I find the proper containers that I like, and the size and shape that I'm using and the volume that I'm using, is then I just started to put everything together and make a little black oxide test. So let's check it out. Looking good.
They come out nice.
All right, so let's get to it now. So these are what the parts look like when they came out of the blasting cabinet. These are the essential parts I'm going to black oxide coat with the shifter. And what I've done, I'm using nylon ties to put them in the solution like this. I don't want to use any metal ties or anything like that, any wire, because that's going to actually get black oxide coated as well then. And I use the CRC brake cleaner just to be sure. And what I'm going to do is I'll just spray everything with CRC brake cleaner. It dries really fast, okay? But just make sure all the grease is off the unit, especially from handprints, all right? It dries fairly quickly. And any rust that may start to appear again, you may want to get off with sandpaper. This does a fairly good job of cleaning the material. So this is what the black oxide concentrate looks like. This is a quart of black oxide concentrate from Caswell. And their instructions say that you need basically 9 to 1. In this case, I'm going to be using cups, all right? So I'm going to do 1 cup of this to 9 cups of distilled water. So these containers that I got from Walmart are great size for shifters and some other items. And basically, it's a 12-cup container. So simply put, 9 of water and 1 of concentrate are going to fit perfectly in this container. So what I'm going to do now is simply put, I'm using a measuring cup, all right? And I'm going to put 9 cups of distilled water. You can get distilled water from usually any supermarket or any pharmacy. So that's 4. There's 8. Then we'll do 1 more cup. That's about right. It's a total of 9 cups. Now we'll do 1 cup of the concentrate. That's about right. Pour it in there. So with these instructions that are very hard to read on here, what they're going to say is that basically you may want to keep it in for up to 30 seconds to 5 minutes max, all right? The problem is you really have to gauge it on the color you want. What's going to happen is on these types of items, what you're going to see is that if you're trying to get a certain type of color with all of this, you're going to want to simply put it in and kind of take it out and look at it until you get the color you desire. It's going to change pretty rapidly in the beginning and then gradually over time. So what you have to do is simply look at it first as you're putting it in and then watch the color change. So we're going to start with the small piece first. And you can see, look at that, already it's changing color. All right? What you're looking to is you don't want to have the air bubbles trapped, so kind of move it around. Now, obviously, if you're doing hardware or something like that, you can leave it in like this, right? But notice the way it's changing. But I could still see like a little bit of gray and a little bit of black. And gradually, the black is kind of coming over and taking over the whole part little by little. All right? And that looks really good. It's coming out good. So you could see I don't know if you could see in the middle here, it's still a little bit gray and the black is kind of coming over again to the whole part. Now the reason why I'm doing this here in the shop is because in Florida, it's really hard to find somebody to do this type of work. And usually they want a large volume to black oxide. And basically they're doing the same thing, only putting it in a bigger vat. So you see it's more uniform now. So I'm going to just leave this in for about another minute and move it around a little bit. And you can see it's coming nice and uniform now. All right, look at that. See? So the next step is to rinse this off in distilled water and then put it in a sealant for roughly like 2 to 5 minutes again. The sealants, you can do a dry sealant or what they call an oil finish sealant. It's basically going to take a while for the sealant to dry, and it doesn't matter in experience what it looks like when it's wet. It's when it looks like when it's dry and you kind of wipe it down afterwards. So that part looks nice and uniform now. All right. Let's look at it up close. Look at that. Okay. Pretty good overall. Nice looking. Now what we're going to do is put it in some water. So now I'm just kind of dipping it in the distilled water. This is what they say to do. Just kind of just rinse the part. And it's good to have something like this that you can absorb some of the water bit and let it run off. All right. Just going to close this up over here. So what I did was I got one of these pots from one of the home supply, one of the home goods type stores, because it's got a little bit of a strainer in here, right? And what you do is just put this part in here now and just soak it in the sealant. Leave it in there for a couple of minutes. And while that's soaking, we're going to move on to the next part here. What they do is they tell you when you're doing these parts to simply check to see if the water, like if you put water on it, because if you have oil, obviously the water is going to run off in a weird direction. So that's another way of testing it. But using the CRC brake cleaner is really a great way of simply just making sure you have no oil on the part. Now, metals are different, okay? So a stainless metal may not work as well as a regular metal. And again, types of alloys and maybe the type of heat treating that it's being used will affect how the black oxide works. Because don't forget, we're kind of corroding the metal here and doing this. So this is looking good. But you see over there in that one little spot where there was some other rust, you see it's not really taking to it well. You could see that, okay? Which is interesting. See, these areas here that I actually sanded are not working out well. Look at this. Right? So I'm going to just pull this and maybe re-blast it and find out what's going on, why it's not taking to areas where sandpaper got into the pores of the metal. All right? So I'm going to just pull this, you see? There's definitely a difference here. I'm going to put in this piece here, the shifter body. Now you see the way, while that one's going in there, you see the way it's kind of has this little kind of sheen to the bubbles on there, all right? That's not going to really matter that much, because what's going to happen is once this dries, this will go away. So we're going to just leave that over here now. Just put it here. And we'll work on this piece. So I'm not really timing anything because I'm looking for consistency in the color, okay? That's what I'm trying to achieve here. And you can see the one part I put back in that had some of that black oxide not really sticking to it. It could be because of heat treating, it could be because of prior treatments, and maybe the blasting didn't get off the old coating as well. So you can put a whole thing of bolts, let's say, in here and let it sit, but you're really, when it comes to old hardware, you're really going to have to clean it thoroughly. Let's just see here. It is not catching those little areas there, okay? So there might have been some issues, but the rest of it looks pretty good. That body looks killer. It looks beautiful, this body. It came out nice. So now we're going to do is the same thing here. We'll put it in the rinse. We'll dump it in the solution here. Let it sit. I know these arms are heat treated, but you can see here the way the water solution is kind of beating off this area here. Who knows? So I'll rinse it in this. Put it in there. All right, so I've had this sitting about maybe 4 minutes in the sealant, and you can see again it gets very bubbly, but that's nothing to really worry about. We're just going to let that dry. And we'll take out this piece too. These didn't come out too bad, but there's something here. You see that? And this is actually where I actually touched it up sanding. So I probably will just blast this again and do it over. All right, but this I think is my fault. It's nothing to do with the coating process. All right, so one note that I want to explain to people here is I'm kind of dipping my hands in this with this protective glove, obviously. But it's probably not a good idea to keep the oil-based solution, in other words, the sealant, next to the water base, because anything that splashes in here is going to create a film on this. You know, oil and water do not mix. The other thing is by me putting my hands in this stuff, you see like this, I'm getting this wet, I'm contaminating it. It's not a good idea. I kind of did this to conserve bench space so that everybody could see steps in the video. But in general, this really should not be near here at all. And I shouldn't really be dipping the same gloved hand in the sealant as in the water solutions at all. All right, so I'm going to just move this out of the way. That's obviously going to leave a film on this. So probably the best thing to do is use a fresh glove here. All right. By the way, I use these gloves from, I think it's called Adina or something. They got these nice ribs in them. They're pretty good. And this part came out fairly good. Same thing. It's a little not uniform in certain areas, but this has been soaking in for more than 5 minutes, okay? It really had to penetrate it well. Now, again, this is a heat-treated part that maybe had a black phosphate coating on it already, so it's not going to corrode technically with the oxide like a normal regular piece of metal would. Even though it was blasted, it took a while for this to happen. We're going to dip it again in the solution. Just simply distilled water rinse. Let it just blot a little bit here. And throw it in the sealant. Now, what's cool about these little Walmart containers is that you can store them for future use. Caswell says that you can store this solution with no problem at all and use it again. So it's not like you have to dump it covered, ready to go for the next time. In the meantime, let's look at these parts. Nice. See, it kind of gives an oily look to it, okay? And when it dries, those little bubbles are going to go away, and it's going to come out with this nice black sheen. And then I'm going to show you the whole shifter assembled when it's all done. All right, now let's go look at the results here. So the case looks pretty good. I really like the way that came out. Very consistent. It seems like this particular metal really black oxide coated very well, very uniform. Same thing with the back end plate. Looks really good. So these two are going to go together like this, so the color really matches well, okay? The gate arms we had some problems with. You could see this discoloration there, and I really believe it's something in the metal itself. I blasted this twice. They came out a little bit better, but see, this one's a little bit more shinier. Depending on the surface finish that I gave it, this was more of a sanded finish. These were more blasted finishes. Now, this is the receiver, and this came out really nice as well. And I just want to show you, I had gotten these from Hirsch for a particular job, and they came in raw like this, unfinished. So I black oxide coated it. This was the original piece in its raw state. Wasn't blasted. It was nothing to it. No surface prep other than just making sure it was degreased and clean with the CRC brake cleaner. The other is the mount here. These mounts, I also got brand new ones made. You can see here, this is completely unfinished, raw metal, all done, and then coated as well. Looks really good. So here you have it, the completely rebuilt Hirsch Plus shifter with all the components I used for the black oxide coating, the case, the back plate, the 3 lever arms, and the receiver handle. Now, I had changed this whole mechanism inside of here, which is called the carrier, and all the springs, obviously, and shims that go along with the rebuild, the cross shaft. That's all new. And I did this because the customer has a second generation F-body type Camaro Firebird that requires this offset handle for a console. The old shifter that he was using, as you could see here, was pretty much something from the 60s. It didn't even incorporate a pivot mechanism. This is one of the really earlier designs, and the spring action is very weak on these as well, so they tend to rattle. And it's well worn. The whole system is pretty well shot and worn. So we used his case and kind of cleaned it up and did all this magic to it, and then put a whole new mechanism inside of it so that it would work properly in the car. And we're going to give him a whole new installation kit with the correct rods and everything so it works properly. So that's it. That's how it came out. I think it looks fantastic, and from testing it, it fits really good and shifts really nice. So I'm really happy with the way this whole black oxide project came out. I think this do-it-yourself black oxide kit works very well. I again got this from a company called Caswell Plating. I purchased it direct from them because what's really good about purchasing from them direct is that you can pick up the phone and call them, and somebody actually answers the phone, and all the questions and concerns I had were answered by them very quickly and immediately. So that's worth something. I usually don't recommend buying something like this on Amazon or eBay or secondhand. It's not worth it. It really isn't. And the money isn't that much. I think this whole kit was like $125, and I have a lot of uses for it, and I've done some different mounts and things already, so it's really worked out quite well and saved me a lot of time in the long run. I also want to thank everybody who has subscribed to my YouTube channel, and if you haven't, please do so. That would mean a lot to me. I have more videos coming up. I wanted to tell everyone, thank everyone for this Buy Me a Coffee link that I posted in several videos, which is right over here again. The Buy Me a Coffee link allows people to give me some money or funds if they appreciate what I'm doing. I put that money towards future builds. A lot of people call me or email me and say, hey, do a video on this transmission and do a video on that transmission. Unfortunately, I don't have every transmission sitting in this shop. I've built a lot of gearboxes, but doesn't mean that I always have them here on hand. So the Buy Me a Coffee funds, what it does is allows me to have some extra cash to go out and buy units. So I've already, through those funds, purchased a Saginaw 4-speed core, as well as a non-world class T5 core, which a lot of people have been asking me to do a non-world class video. So these are coming up shortly. That's what I do with the funds. So I appreciate everything that you guys are doing, all the feedback, all the subscriptions. It's been a fantastic ride, and we're going to keep on doing it. Thank you very much. See you soon.